Okay, today is another day. Okay, well, welcome to Real Raw Recovery. I'm Joe Tilley.
I'm Tyler Tilley.
And we're here to talk about recovery from our own personal perspective. And generally speaking, I'm right almost all the time. And sometimes you are too, Tyler. Okay, let's open this meeting with a moment of silence and the We Serenity We prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and wisdom to know the difference. Okay, so the reading today, Thy will, not mine. When making specific requests, it will be well to add to each one of them this qualification, if it be thy will. That's from the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 102, 103. I ask simply that throughout the day, God place in me the best understanding of his will that I can have for that day, and that I be given the grace by which I may carry it out. As the day goes on, I can pause when facing situations that must be met and decisions that must be made, and renew the simple request, thy will, not mine, be done. I must always keep in mind that in every situation, I am responsible for the effort, and God is responsible for the outcome. I can let go and let God by humbly repeating, thy will, not mine, be done. Patience and persistence in seeking his will for me will free me from the pain of selfish expectations. Well, that makes it a lot easier for me, when it comes to decision making. If I pray about it and ask for help, and then just accept that whatever route I take, whatever road I take, whatever decision I make, if I'm praying about it and asking for help and asking for direction, I think I want to trust that. I want to trust that decision. And I guess I think what I'm saying is I do trust that decision. Things may not necessarily always work out the way that I want them to, but they work out. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think the second paragraph has a good definition when people in general ask like what's God's will. If you could easily take this paragraph and say, you put in the effort and then letting go of your higher power for the outcome. So like when, there's always that hang up, like what's God's will for me? It would be,
right.
You would be truly unknown, but you could always just indicate that as long as you put the energy in and you do it all the way and you put in the energy, the outcome is in your creator's hands. You say, like, how do I know what God's will for me is? Well, if you take any project you're working on or any sort of circumstance or situation and you put energy into it and then let it go, the outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the outcome is what this is saying. Well, then that's God's will.
So I should be okay with that, right?
Depends who you're asking, I think.
Yeah.
But I think also another good thing about this reading is, or what you said, I think, was that you just trust that whatever's going on has value, or is a creator's will, or like you trust that whatever's going on is what's supposed to go on, correct?
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, like I often just, I kind of stop, I don't know for how long, but I've stopped asking uh, uh, one of the dynamics I have with a higher power, I stopped asking for things and just saying thank you. Like, thank you for whatever the experience is. So it's not about asking for anything or even direction, or it's just saying, it's just having the ability to be, because I've had a really kind of like, for me, I've had a really big, like, you're cool with just going, it works, so I don't change it. And for me, I've gone really far down the rabbit hole. I don't mean to box you in like that. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but like, often what I get from you is that, like, I just get on my knees and I pray and I do my prayers and it works, and so I don't change anything. And for me, it's been like such like a deep experience and huge journey with my creator, where I've learned like a lot of things. I've learned a lot of things that are very different from what they once were. But one of the things is like I remember, it's kind of like, Tyler, stop asking for shit. Like asking for serenity, ask for direct, asking for this, asking for that. It's just like, I'm just a human being on this planet, and you can create stories if you want. But at the end of the day, what I do know is important is that sense of gratitude for just having this life and looking at my, like, just being in the moment and being grateful to have this moment. And life can get really chaotic and twisted and bizarre and filled with a lot of doubt, for me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I still believe that that's like just an experience. And like, it's really, yeah, even right now I could take us down the rabbit hole. But so I just feel like one of the tools that I would suggest is like, not stop asking. Like, I'm not saying that other people should do that, but for me, it was just like, stop trying to look to God to change things in my favor, and then just being, thank you, just thank you for this, thank you for that, thank you for this moment, and like, and just thank you for whatever happens. Because like, what happens is I start playing games and I start twisting it, and I start believing that things do happen for a reason. It's like, well, like, because we play games with ourselves so we can digest this crazy life. Like, oh, this happened, so this happened, and we try to connect dots that I don't really believe exist. But as a human being, we do that naturally. And I think I wanted to detach from that a little bit by just saying thank you. Just like, thank you for this next experience. Stop trying to align the stars, thinking that God's moving them in my favor, is, I think, actually a healthy place for me to be in. But again, I don't wish that up. I don't think that other people need to have that kind of higher power as I do, but I just believe, like, instead just going, thank you, like, whatever happens today, thank you. Like, thank you that I get to call my dad on the phone and have this slotted time. Thank you that my painting's not, like, it's just all like, because I'm going to go do whatever I'm going to do anyway, with or without God. That's what I've learned. And like, so I would like to, I think a really healthy behavior is the sense of gratitude. And that sense of gratitude is very valuable and actually holds some weight, in my opinion, versus anything else. Like, versus me saying, oh, I'm going to tap into what God wants. Okay, go do that. But what I do know is that actually has some weight is gratitude, and how I behave with that with a sense of gratitude is almost tangible. Like I know when I'm grateful and when I know when I'm not grateful. So it's a little bit more foggy when I say, oh, I'm connected and when I'm not connected. What does connected look like? Well, connected looks like I'm grateful. Okay, so how do we get to that point where you feel grateful? Well, I'm just grateful for my life. I'm grateful that I'm breathing. Again, like recapping it over. And then, okay, I have a good energy and now I'm going to make my decisions and my next actions from a good spot, from a good place versus fear or lack, right? Making
Mhm.
out of fear and lack doesn't typically benefit me. So I want to get out of that, and putting myself in a grateful attitude is really valuable because because there's just proof in those. There's just proof in my own experience from doing one and the other.
Yeah, I feel better when I'm grateful, so I want to work towards being grateful.
Yeah.
And working towards being grateful for me is like when I can be helpful, when I can help somebody else, that helps me to be grateful. Um, I know that my prayers, doubt creeps in, doubt kicks in, and that's when the doubt is kicking in when I'm doubting the existence of God, or doubting, what the value of life, or doubting anything. When I'm there, it's not a good place for me to be. It's not a pleasant place for me. So if I can get to a place where I'm feeling some gratitude, that's awesome. And again, that's the best way for me to get to a grateful place is to be helpful to somebody else, whatever that looks like. And so, um, so I that you know the my prayers include my 11th step prayer every morning, which is, God, direct my thinking. I ask that my thinking be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. I ask for inspiration and intuitive thought or decision. What is my next step to be? Free me from self-will. What can I do for others? Thy will, not mine, be done. So I go through that. That's my prayer each morning. And when I say that prayer, I believe that I'm making an attempt to turn my will and life over to the care of God, as I understand God, and so I'm asking for direction, which may or may not come. I don't even know, but I just continue to do it, and whatever happens, I'm in a place where I can accept. Bless you. Where I can bless you. Where I'm in a place where I can accept whatever happens. I think easier because I feel like I'm making an attempt to plug into the power. And so that, if I'm making that attempt to plug into the power, I think I'm doing the best I can to do God's will, to follow God's will, to be the best I can be. And so that process, and ultimately, I think it helps me to feel better.
Right.
And which is really, isn't that the goal for all of us? We want to feel better.
Right.
Like I'm not gonna, suggest that I only do God's will, and I'm always following God's will, and I'm always doing what, God wants me to do, and all that other stuff. But I won't suggest that's what I do. But because I make the attempt to fall in line with what's God's will for me, and willing to follow direction if I get some, if I think I'm getting direction that to me seems to be if I get direction, if I get a message or whatever that seems to be God directed, or if I find myself doing something and it feels right, then I believe I'm doing my best to do God's will, which is really what's going to make me feel bad. What's feel good? What makes me feel good probably is it's ultimately what's best for me and for those around me. and that's, of course we're going to make mistakes along the way, and I'm going to, you know, my ego pops back in and takes me to a place where I'm changing direction, and maybe I'm not right now at this moment. My ego's in control, and I'm not willing to look at what, or follow what I imagine to be God's will for me. I'm now being overcome by my ego, and I'm following a direction that my ego and will are taking me. And okay, so I'm on this route for a little while, and now I'm going to try, now that I've realized I'm not really happy in my situation doing this, following my ego. Now I'm going to try to I'm going to stop and ask when agitated or doubtful what my direction should be. What direction should I be going into? Maybe I have to just put the brakes on where I'm going right now, stop following the ego, and find out what my direction should be. So that's, I think that's where I'm coming from.
Kind of think like this whole thing is an experience, like this whole existence is an experience, and it could be a simulation, it could be a direct gift from Christ, uh, it could be anything. And I I'm open to whatever in that regard. But I think if this whole thing is an experience, then any road I take or any decision I make falls under the, I don't know if the word's guise, but falls under the realm of a creator. And so I don't believe there's a time where you become detached or you're separated because you made a decision out of ego. I don't believe that, okay, now I'm connected, now I'm not. Maybe physically there can be some repercussions of me, like it's kind of like those guys that meditate before they walk over coals or hang weights from their nutsack. Like they get all like, they tap into some energy so that they're able to perform those tasks, and they would allude to that it's some greater power. So I do believe there is like probably a chemical reaction that, like, right now I feel like God's on my side, so I'm going to win this boxing bout. Or right now God's on my side and I'm connected, so this is going to happen. If you step back and kind of further back and just realize, like, I'm a human being, I have all these crazy thoughts. I have thoughts about gods in my brain and all these different crazy thoughts. And it's like, okay, but I'm also just a human being. Like that, as far as that's going concerned, like pretty much everyone on the planet's going to agree on that we're just like a life form that exists. Now, if something did create this life for me, and so there needs to be some acknowledgement to that, like a thank you, and like, thank you for creating this life for me, and I want to maintain a relationship with this kind of being that I've imagined in my head, that made something, like that gave me this existence. And even in that, it's like, okay, I'll buy it. Like I just feel like life's so precious. I'm willing to go, yeah, like something, like even if it's just Mother Nature, like an evolution, that we came from apes, like that's still precious. That the way that, again, how I'm relating to you right now and communicating with you right now, like the person that gave me life, is pretty amazing. And so I'm willing to go, that's not my doing. I didn't ask for this. I didn't create like this world. And I'm not even saying that there's this mystic figure that did. Even if we just go Mother Nature, like nature itself created this. I'm willing to give that its due and saying thank you for this existence. Now everything that falls underneath that umbrella is that existence's, that being's doing. So there's no such thing of like, oh, I'm an ego, I'm in the, no, you're just a human being that's thinking a bunch of shit. And that's just the brain inside of you. And you can work to be a better person, because as you said, when you do things that are good for yourself and other people, that's pretty much what you've determined as God's will. And that's great. But like, I don't need to like go further down and going, well, this is God's will, this is not God's will. Oh, when I'm a dickhead, that's not God's will. When I'm a saint, that's God's will. No, like I don't want to play that game, because that can get really distorted for me. And I feel like again, it's just not, I don't feel it's fair to me to do that kind of stuff. So I just go like Mother Nature, like, thank you for this life. Thank you for the thoughts I have. Thank you for like these experiences I have. The day that I'm a jerk, the day that I'm a saint, the day that I'm numb, the day that I run from my problems, the day that I face my problems. Like it's all just blended into this experience. And I think that's so amazing. And like again, for me to bring it right back to this moment, the way that we communicate is simply astonishing. Like just that, like, as far as we know, like ants don't communicate at this level, where they might communicate in some different facet and stuff, but we actually have language and expressions and feelings and emotions, and we create circumstances and situations for ourselves. And like that to me is the miracle, not what my brain's telling me is God's will and not God's will. Like that to me is just like everyone has their own, like that's where we kind of lose that's where everybody gets a little lost. But I really, I remember this guy, I'll wrap up on this note. This guy asked me about God, and I just said, I gave him a bit of a rundown about a few things. And then I said, you know what, man, just go into nature. Like if you want to experience anything, not even God, I won't even go that far, but if you just want to experience kind of life, get out of your day-to-day and go into nature and find something there. Find how life exists through kind of like, there's something magical about nature in itself. And just like when you go for hikes with mom, or you just go out, like that's, I believe, where you'll find a power that's kind of unexplainable and feel like you're at home in a sense. And I personally feel that. I think there's a power in nature. So that's what I ended up telling him. It's like, and then I do believe you'll feel a presence that's greater than yourself when you do help somebody, like more in your realm, where helping somebody else, you feel this power that's like just this warm, wholehearted, warm feeling that kind of wraps your body when you do something nice for somebody. You give somebody your time, the time of day, and like that kind of thing is a beautiful thing. But again, I'm not in the world where, well, this is God's will and that's not God. So we probably agree about a lot of things. I just don't like putting things into certain wording, because I feel like my brain does that all day long. And I just try to like get out of that completely with, okay, so what's like the bare minimum that I can like get rid of all of these kind of stories I tell myself about what God is and God's not, and what I am and what I'm not. So
Yeah, I think, yeah. So that like you said, I think we agree with a lot of stuff anyway. And it's like, it's to me, it's like humanness, and but every once in a while we experience a God moment, and like I said, like helping other people, feeling a sense of gratitude. I think that brings us to a God moment where we feel like even communicating at a deep level. I think brings us to a God moment where we feel like we're being lifted into a higher place, right? And so we get to experience these God moments. And when I'm talking about, like, I'm going along in my day and I feel connected, and then all of a sudden my ego slips in, somebody cuts me off, and I get angry at that person, and I want to attack the person, or somebody says or does something, and it really brings me to a place where I want to see that person punished or whatever. I think that's when I start getting back into ego and outside of the God consciousness that brings me happiness and peace and contentment. So I don't think that, I think, like you said, the whole process, it's all part of our human experience, but I think we're in a better place when we don't lose the God connection, where our ego doesn't get in the way and takes us away from that God connection. But unfortunately, because we're human, we don't have the ability to constantly stay connected to God. And so, we have to accept the fact that sometimes I'm connected to God, sometimes I'm not. That's just the way it is. That's okay. But I believe that, the process of recovery, inventory, amends, all the process of recovery, and then living in a place where I try to stay connected to the God of my understanding to the best of my ability on a daily basis, that allows me to be in a way better place than I could possibly be without that. Because I believe that when I was drinking, I would be in a place where the ego was always in control, and I was always struggling with that, and always unhappy, and never having the peace of mind that comes with the connection to the power. Maybe something would happen, and I'd feel something. I'd have a good connection with somebody, and there might feel like there's something kind of greater than a summation that's greater than the totality of its parts. I feel like something great is happening. I feel something, a great connection here. Something's going on here, and I may get a little sense of that when I'm drinking and in a sick, I believe, the sick way of thinking. But when in recovery, as a result of that, I get a lot more moments where I feel the connection and feel, that there is something greater than just me and you, but together we form something that's greater than the two of us. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, because one of the other problems that I have when I'm not connected to the power, at a conscious level, is I will get a thought, and I will start to believe the thought, and then the thought seems to become my reality. And I think when I was, before recovery, I would have those thoughts and they would become my reality, and it would mess me up. And it would be really, I think, impossible for me to have a God connection, because I'm so married to that thought. And I think when I felt depression, I think that's what happened to me, is I was so so caught up in the thought that which I believed that in retrospect was not true, but I believed it.
So I'm hearing you, and I believe in a lot of, so I guess when I like to have deep conversations, and when I like to have intimate and deep conversations with people, especially with yourself, I kind of come from a different category or a different compartment, and I guess I have to preface this because we're posting it on in a forum where people in theory could listen to it. So maybe that also plays a, but like when, because I think it's safe to say, like, there's a couple things. Like tonight, I'm going to go to bed sober, and I feel confident saying that. I feel egoless saying that. I just feel like that's just a pretty much a blatant fact, unless something obscene happens or something crazy happens, like a plane crashes in the building or something. Like unless something earth-shattering that changes my course of my patterns and everything. Like, so we got that. So I'm going to state that as okay. So we got that covered. I'm going to go to bed sober now. Plus, it's late already. Okay.
Yep.
Then you run through the fact that I don't believe I'm immune from going down a kind of like a spiral of addiction if I were to pick up a mood altering substance like drugs and alcohol. I don't believe I'm immune from kind of the reaction that it would have over me, even if it was a chemical like malady, like a disease. Even if I granted you that, I'll use that word, like even if so it took me that where I have a bad chemical reaction, allergy I'd rather call it, but I have an allergy to that, so I'll grant you that. And I do believe it's healthy. I'll go even further to go down the route that for me, it's once in a while, it's good for me to remember where I came from. And where I'm going. And I do believe in the sentiment of what other people did for me. I do believe that it's good karma to do that in return, like share some of my story with somebody else who's maybe not has as much time or is going through a hard time regarding their society. So I do believe in that platform. But where I kind of branch away, it seems like in these conversations, at least, not necessarily with, like, just like I don't need to like go, oh, but when I was like this 20 years ago, like I just don't think like that anymore. I don't have the rationality that I did when I don't have the same, like I bet you even if you were to look at my brain, it might be a stretch, but like if you were to look at my brain, like it's probably physically different than it was when I was 17. And so I don't really like day-to-day basis. I don't go, oh, be careful because you don't want to like go back to like, so I don't really play those kind of games with myself. I think there's a place for it. And there's a healthy fear that I think is useful to go like, yeah, I don't want to go back there. So I better do something that I better change so that I can, not go down a slippery slope. And I think there's healthy barriers. And I know that I have blinds or barometer that help me gauge my thing. But like what I find, what differs from me and you is like you constantly bring up like when you like your ego and 27 years ago. But like, so I try to like gauge it from what, like who was I yesterday, not 20.
Right. And you know what? And I'll tell you what that comes from. I'll tell you why I do that and where that comes from. That comes from a lot with sharing with new people. Because what I like to do is I like to bring myself back, and I like to remember, and I like to talk about the journey and how I got from A to B. And for me to remember what it was like what I find that really useful is when you know, I'm talking, for example, at a newcomers meeting, and somebody might come in there and talk about how, you know, you're newcomers, you should do this, you should do that, you should whatever. Right? It's like when Bill Wilson was talking to new people before he had his hookup with Bob. He was basically telling people what they need to do in order to get to sober like he is. And when he found it wasn't working very well because people didn't want to listen to him. But when he met Bob and he just basically told his story and talked about where he was, what happened, and what it was like, what happened, what's like today. When he started doing that, people started to relate to him and say, wow, yeah, I felt like that. I did that. I can relate to that. So I spent a lot of time thinking about, focusing on what it was like. Then I spent quite a lot of time remembering what happened. And I remember, and I can tell you what it's like today. And if I do that, I believe that people can relate to me, especially newcomers. So, I don't want to forget where I came from. I do a number. I try to keep that as fresh as possible in my mind, and not because, not for any other reason than just so I can relate to the newcomer. So when I shared at a newcomers meeting, I try to bring myself back. Where was I? What was going through my head? What kind of things was I thinking about? Where was I in terms of my, depressed state? Where was I in terms of my, my lack of faith? Like, where was I? What was going through my head? What did I have to do to change? And what steps did I take to get to where I am today? And I believe that that's important for me to always remember, because if I'm going to work with newcomers, I have to relate to them. And so that's why I constantly mention that stuff, is because I'm constantly relating to new people.
That's your forte.
That's my forte, is working with new people. That's what I do. And so, if I'm working with people that aren't new and just basically talking about life in recovery, and as you like to say, if I'm talking about eating the cake, right? Then let's talk about eating the cake. Let's talk about eating the cake. And I think you do that amazingly well. And that's part of what your forte is, let's talk about eating the cake. And somebody who's, as you mentioned, and we had this conversation before, somebody who's been in recovery a long time, maybe doesn't want to talk about that, the struggles they have coming in and stuff like that. Maybe they want to talk about the good things that happen as a result of being in recovery. And I think that's where you go with it, and it's great. But for somebody like me, who likes to relate to newcomers, that's part of my deal. I like to relate to newcomers. I like to bring myself back to a point where I remember what it was like. And because I do it frequently, I think I do it really easily.
Right.
And so that's my shtick. And I like to, I like to try to relate to newcomers.
Yeah, no, good point.
Right.
I just can't, I have no, in general, I have no desire to try to remember what my brain was like in certain ways. I just don't benefit from it. And I don't,
right.
But that's just who I really like comparing because I just live a sober life. Like that's just kind of like one of the deals with the devil I made is like, yeah, like I I I just appreciate who I am more than if I were to add other elements that were gonna most likely cause a crazy tornado. Like I just can't afford that right now. And that's where I'm not immune. Like maybe tomorrow I'll want a tornado, and obviously then my thinking, then we have a problem. So, and it's nice to know that I have places to go for that kind of thinking. And that can happen even sometimes in a blink of an eye. Like all of a sudden I'm doing good and then I'm not doing good by the afternoon. And again, it's really good to know that there's support for me. But where I am today is that unfortunately, that's not my battle. It's not the daily battle and grind of like, I hope I don't go out today. Like
No.
it's so therefore it's like, okay, so now what are you doing with the life? Like like what's the afterthought? What's the afterlife like? And
Mhm.
what is it really like? What's it like living with obsessive compulsive disorder and addiction, having an addictive personality, and then also what is it like devoting your life to something and using a lot of those behaviors towards what you do as a profession and a vocation and a lifestyle and like all and how do you and then like really taking that persona on of as a creator. Like I create for a living, like I create visions from my mind and I bring them to life. And what's that life like? And I'll always have the element of like, yes, I'm sober and I've gone, but like that, it's almost like 2 or 3 lives ago.
And you know what? I think we need both, right? Obviously, I think we need both. I think we need the, we need the kindergarten teachers, and we need the grad studies guys,
Right.
and everything in between, right? So how do I get sober?
Yeah. Don't ask
What
me.
do I do?
Ask Joe
Yeah,
Tilly.
yeah, yeah. How do I overcome those, those thoughts and feelings in early sobriety? How do I function in a healthy, well-adjusted way, well into my sobriety? So I mean, it's kind of like what you're talking about is post-secondary school. What I was talking about is kindergarten
Maybe.
and grade 1, right? But it's all part of the journey, and it's all necessary. If I'm struggling at any point in my sobriety, or even if I'm not struggling, if I'm just wanting to make it better, if I'm wanting to take it to the next level, what do I have to do to get there? And if you have lots of experience to share in that regard, that's really beneficial. And I think what we're talking about is probably very helpful for both, right? That's what I'm saying. It's very helpful for anybody, right? I think so. And so, you can use that or not. All right, ready to wrap it up?
Yep.
Okay. Serenity, we pray. God,
Right.
grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and wisdom to know the difference.